Have you ever wanted to make a campaign with a bunch of elves, but you're not really sure how to do it? Or maybe you want the elves to be the center of the campaign and then other races be the players. The thing is elves are an amazing race to use as a central point to the campaign because of what we think about elves from a stereotypical standpoint. But let's talk about 5 really interesting campaigns you can do around the elves and what may have happened to them. There's a moment when elves go from immortality to mortality. What about exploring that? If the elves, say, in your campaign are immortal, but the young elves are aging much, much faster than normal, and it looks like their mortality is gone, or elves are starting to die of natural causes, and that's never happened before. So now the elves are scared that they're going to lose their numbers because their elderly are dying and their young are aging faster, and they're not having offspring fast enough. So the elves are starting to dwindle out. This is a great way for the players to have to interact with the elves in such a way where the elves' conundrum is something the players are trying to help solve, or maybe is a overarching thing where the elves are part of the magical society, and now that their numbers are waning, the elves are trying to solidify themselves and regain their immortality through whatever means necessary, turning the elves maybe into liches or practicing magics that have been long forbidden. But I like the idea that elves' immortality is coming to an end. Another idea for elves is if the elves have lost their mortality a long time ago, but a small group of elves found their way back to immortality. Now, the fun part is, how did they do that? Was it a pact with a devil, with a demon? Did they find or channel energy from an abyss? This is something that on the surface could look like the elves are simply finding their immortality that was lost for centuries ago. The reality is something powerful is basically using the elves to gain power for itself and granting false immortality to that small group. It makes elves in that cult a very specific bad guy, but very easy for them to gain numbers as they bring people in and grant them back their immortality, where their aging stops altogether. The interesting thing about this is, though, is how would one know that they're immortal? Was it a feeling? Was it something that showed them? Did they used to wear amulets and their magical energy of immortality filled the amulet up? You have to give a way for the elves to know that they had immortality back. And then that also shows the players who's been seduced by that cult because they're wearing that thing. They have rejuvenated facial features, all the things that could come from that. But just keep in mind that it goes back to the idea that elves were once immortal and a group of them have gained back the immortality, but something nefarious gave it to them. So now you have to combat with elves regaining immortality and the thing that did that for them. Will the elves agree with the party? Will the party be able to persuade the elves? Do they take down the cult? Do they go and persuade? This can be everything from a combat-oriented campaign to one of political intrigue. But the idea that you involve devils, demons, the abyss, or even the fae makes this very cool. Something we don't do with elves very often is a disease that affects a singular race in Dungeons & Dragons. The elves, the dwarves, the humans. I like if an elven campaign, basically the elves were immortal or long-lived, 800-900 years, but a disease is causing them to age at a exponential rate, basically putting them on the same path as humans, meaning they'll still die around 70 or 80 years old, depending on your world and how long humans live. The fun part about this is taking that speeding of aging and realize that an entire subset of elves was created. These elves are cast out of the society because they're aging too fast and the other elves don't want to be infected. It creates a divide within the elven community between the diseased and non-diseased, actually creating strife within a political party that should be the same. And the elves aren't trying to find a way to cure those that are aging fast. They're trying to find a way to stop them, including killing those that are diseased. So you can create massive conflict within an entire race of people. You can create a divide where they separate one another. There's so many ways to utilize this idea that elves that are long-lived are pacing at a regular rate, but maybe they have a regular rate of birth. Maybe they have as many kids as humans do. Something that makes them more feel like humans, which in turn takes away their elven nature and creates even more of a cultural divide between the two. There's a lot you can do with that when it comes to the elves' cultural society, the disease that then creates the divide. What do you think about that? How would you use that one? Another thing with elves is the idea that they're long-lived, that once they were immortality, find something that was a power of theirs long since forgotten. A magical item, a magical way of casting things, a different type of magic that is now dangerous to the world. The elves are trying to gain back possibly a lost power, and they've done exactly that. And so you can telegraph this by creating a divide within the elven society, by maybe they pull back, or maybe they try to become domineering. It creates a political intrigue that the elves are then pushing to actually gain this magical power back. Maybe they need something that each one of the races has in their capital cities, that each kingdom has. Maybe the humans took something of great value from the elves, broke it into many pieces. There's so many ways you can do this where the elven community becomes the central plot point of your campaign by making them go after something that was part of their culture millions of years ago, that gave them such millions of years ago. That's a little far, maybe thousands of years ago, that gave them their immortality, gave them a magic that allowed them to control the world that the other races took away from them because the elves were domineering at that point. This is one of those things where you can have aspects of the past that you don't have to create right away, but all you do know is the elves are going for that magical item. I love this concept of trying to retrieve something from the past that gave them power that was taken from them, but made them worse than they are now. What would you do? What would the thing be that your elves are going for? I'm curious. Another campaign idea around elves actually is a little bit different than what I'm used to. It's a group of elves despises how the elves have viewed the other races, the shorter-lived races, and choose to gain retribution for the other species. Now, here's the thing about this, is this creates a political divide within the elven community where one side looks like it's on the other race's side, but they've gone above and beyond. They've gone to go and kill and maim the current community of elves because they don't believe elves deserve a place because of how they've treated people in the past. And in the elves' history, it's still current. The long lives of the elves make it so the people that committed these atrocities are still alive. It's not like us humans that the descendants of the descendants of the descendants, those people did bad things. No. In the elven community, the people that committed the atrocities are saying it's ancient history, but they're the ones that did it, and they're still alive and still around. And the organizations that you either took advantage of, utilized, abused the other races and species are still here. You create a dichotomy where the players don't know which group to side with. I love this concept. What would you do with it? How would you create that divide within the elven community? I'm curious. So that's a couple of five ways that you can actually use elves as the core to your campaign. Ways to create divides where they become intriguing. Things that are not necessarily black and white, right or wrong, and the players have to delve into them to see where that lies. And as a dungeon master, it gives you plenty of time to build that backstory. You can put together, this is what's happening in the world, this is what's happening in the story, but as time goes along, you can fill in those bits and pieces where you need be. In fact, if you listen to your players, the assumptions they come up with, maybe this is what happened, maybe that's what happened, maybe the elven community have actually found the magical font that gave them that, and that's why they're going to the mountains and trying to kill all the dwarves there because that's where the magical font is, which used to be controlled by the elves 1,000 years ago. Sure, why not? You can let the players help build this world because there's so much mystery behind what's actually going on. So as always, guys, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment below. Tell me how you would use elves in a slightly different way, or what tropes do elves have that you love to use in your campaigns to make them a campaign focus. I'm curious what you would do, and as always, we will see you next time.